And then they did dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps in Michigan and Pennsylvania and all over.
Well, that was just a quick snippet of Donald Trump's interview with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business. This was the first lengthy interview that Donald Trump, did following the loss of the general election. And he's continuing on with the same insane, unfounded claims of voter fraud. I do want to remind you all, before we get to all the various clips from this interview, that the Trump campaign has engaged in a total of 38 failed actions in trying to prove voter fraud, okay? They've either withdrawn from cases or had judges rule against them because of a lack of evidence, which is why I keep repeating that these claims of voter fraud are unfounded. Now, with that said, Donald Trump distanced himself from Sidney Powell, who was initially one of the Trump campaign lawyers. But it's funny that he did so because he's just repeating her lunatic claims during the interview with Maria Bartiromo, including this one.
You start with these machines that have been suspect, not allowed to be used in Texas, the Dominion machines, where tremendous reports have been put out. We have affidavits from many people talking about what went on with machines. They had glitches. You know what a glitch is? A glitch is supposed to be when a machine breaks down. Well, no, we had glitches where they moved thousands of votes from my account to Biden's account. And these are glitches. So they're not glitches, they're theft. They're fraud, absolute fraud.
Again, this was a claim that was made popular by Sidney Powell, who has, essentially been completely distanced from the Trump campaign. She's been disregarded, she's been disposed of, and it's amazing because again, Donald Trump is repeating the same insane things that she said. There's absolutely no evidence that Dominion, in any way switched votes from Trump to Biden. The Trump campaign has failed to prove that. That's why they keep losing these court cases. And I also want to just quickly note that Donald Trump spoke for a full 6.5 minutes before Maria Bartiromo jumped in. And when she did finally jump in, all she did was aid and abet him. It was beyond a softball interview. This was an interview specifically meant to enable the ridiculous and divisive election fraud claims coming out of the Trump campaign.
Yeah, so there's the very funny and the very serious part of this. They're all over social media now. The right wingers are actually, with a straight face, talking about the massive dumps all over the election. I don't know that if it didn't start as a 8chan kind of trolling thing, or some sort of I don't know if Ken Klippenstein's behind it. It's a left-wing trolling operation. I don't know, but hey, let's get idiot MAGA guys to talk about massive dumps. And how there was dumps all over the election. And here they are, all the way up to the chief idiot talking about it. Everything he said was a complete and utter lie. Remember, Sidney Powell said she was gonna have a fire hose. Every time I say fire hose, I wanna do this. Fire hose of evidence. 0-38. So the Kraken finally was released, by the way, if you don't, after they cut her loose, Sidney Powell filed a couple of cases anyway, including in Georgia. Everything is misspelled. It's like a drunk person or someone on meth typed it out and didn't bother spell checking. And none of it makes any sense. There's zero evidence in there, as always. So, but now the serious part is that Trump is poisoning the culture of half this country. Because remember, it's so hard for people that are not in the cult to understand how the cult thinks. When the dear leader says something, they believe it completely, utterly, immediately, without any questioning. In fact, if anyone questions what the dear leader said, they'll be furious. So the minute he says those outrageous, fantastical things, they immediately believe it's true. They're like, oh yeah, there was a dump in the election. Somebody took a dump in the middle of the election and all those votes were switched. Thousands of votes were switched immediately from Trump to Biden. Well, everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. They were switched immediately. No, you don't need evidence. No. That's the dumping is the thing with the evidence, right? Kraken /dump/Trump, right? So half this country Only 3% of Trump voters believe Biden actually won the election. 73% say it was definitely stolen, and the others are still thinking about it, like 20 some odd percent. Probably stolen, but I'm not sure. I don't know if it was the Kraken or the dump. But so it's funny and it's not. That's 70 million some odd lunatics running around going, it's stolen, dumped. And then you have if it's on TV, they believe it. Look, it's true of Democrats as well as Republicans. If Rachel Maddow says anything, and I don't mean to pick on Rachel, anyone on MSNBC, and by the way, it could be now massive right-wingers they have on MSNBC. For a lot of folks in our audience are also above 65. We love you guys, lower percentage. It doesn't matter, we love you. And a lot of those folks are from the old days. But on average, if you're above the age of 45, certainly 55, 65, and MSNBC says something, you go, oh yes, that's right. No, Medicare for all will cost more. Even though every study shows it costs less, it will cost more. I heard it on MSNBC, right? And same with these guys. So Bartiromo doesn't question, goes, oh my God, it's disgusting. We're gonna get to some more clips. They go, oh, well, okay, it must be true. Trump and Bartiromo agree, so it's obviously true. So that poison is in the bloodstream of American politics now. So let's continue showing you how he's pulling this off.
Well, let's take a look at the next video where Trump restates something that's already been debunked through the courts in Pennsylvania.
The mail-in ballots are a disaster. They sent millions and millions and millions of mail-in ballots. I'm sure you know people that got 2, 3, or 4, because I do, where they said, we got 4 ballots. They got one at a country home. Dead people were seeing ballots. But even worse, dead people were applying to get a ballot. They were making application to get ballots. Many. And we're not talking about 10 people. We're talking, there are a lot of dead people that so-called voted in this election. But dead people were, in some cases, in many, many cases, thousands of cases, voted. But also dead people made application to vote. They were dead 10 years, 15 years, and they actually made application.
That's right. Trump believes that dead people made applications to vote, and then they proceeded to vote in this election. I apologize because I misstated something before I tossed to that clip. This wasn't just proven by courts in Pennsylvania, or debunked, I should say, by courts in Pennsylvania. My allegation that Trump is lying here was confirmed by Tucker Carlson, who had run a segment about a dead individual, someone who had died, but who somehow managed to vote in the election. And then later on, he found out that was not the truth and brought the individual in question on his show to clarify that there had been a mistake and that person was very much alive and voted legally. Right, so all of the allegations coming from Donald Trump himself and his unhinged lawyers has either been debunked or has been tossed out of court by judges, including Trump-appointed judges who are like, show us the evidence, and if you don't have it, please stop wasting our time.
Yeah, so first of all, I didn't know that Trump had become Haley Joel Osment. I see dead people. As Edwin, our stage manager here, pointed out, maybe he sees brain dead people asking to vote. Yeah, that was your guys, by the way, Trump. That's true. In terms of the allegations, Tucker made a big deal out of it. They all day like, oh, we have found 4 dead people who voted in Georgia. 4. Okay, Biden won by over 12,000. Yeah, but we found 4. And then they're like, yeah, it turns out not 4, not 4. One of them voted as Mrs. blank blank, and that was her husband, and she goes by Mrs. That's the old school. Yeah, okay, so she's not a dead person. Then they found the other person who has the same name as someone who died before, but actually is herself and voted perfectly legally. They're like, okay, fine, 2 dead people, and then later they found those other 2 people as well. They're like, fine, 0 dead people. But we win, we obviously win, we obviously win. No, you don't, no, you don't. You're a bunch of little babies just crying and crying and crying all day long. So that's what he's doing here. Everything he says is a lie. Look, the press should have been 1,000 times harder on him from day one because it let this fester, it let it sink in. So now when he says the most outrageous, insane things, his dumbass followers that are in his dumbass cult all believe him. Like, oh yeah, dead people, yeah, everybody knows. The dead people were asking for ballots, everybody knows it. We don't have to prove it. In Georgia, you know what their main go-to thing is? Well, Biden couldn't have won Georgia, so we win. That's not a thing. You can't go to court and say he couldn't have won, so we win. That's not a thing. Ay, ay, ay.
After Trump went on this long tirade listing all of these unfounded claims, did Bartiromo do any fact checking? Did she fill her audience in on how the Trump campaign has lost 38 separate court battles? No, instead, she did this.
This is a very serious turning point for America. So this is no longer about you, President Trump. This is about America. And many people agree with you. According to Reuters, 68% of Republicans and 28% of all Americans, that includes Democrats, believe there was fraud in this election.
Well, it doesn't really matter what his supporters believe. What does matter is that these allegations have gone through the formal process. The Trump campaign has had the opportunity to make its case in front of both state judges and federal judges. And again, in 38 separate cases, the Trump campaign has lost. They have failed. Just a few updates from the weekend. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, for instance, dismantled a lawsuit brought by Republican congressmen who wanted to literally invalidate every single absentee vote in the state. And so, the state Supreme Court is like, but why? Why would we do that? And so, of course, there's the allegations of fraud. Okay, great. So show us the evidence of widespread fraud that specifically impacts these absentee ballots. We don't have it. Okay, well, then this case gets tossed out. Also, the state's Supreme Court also dismissed it and said the rules were actually, by the way, when it comes to absentee ballots, in the state of Pennsylvania, the rules were implemented by Republican lawmakers. The Republican lawmakers are the ones who brought this lawsuit. It's insane. Then also in Wisconsin, the Trump campaign spent $3 million in order to do a recount in the state of Wisconsin. The recount was actually completed over the weekend. And what we found was that the Trump campaign, yes, did lose. Trump did lose to Biden in the state of Wisconsin, and the recount only found that Biden actually won by an additional dozens of additional votes. So Biden has won by more votes after the recount was done in Wisconsin. And then Cenk, I just want to quickly mention some of the other situations happening in Pennsylvania. So for instance, on Friday, a 3-member panel confirmed unanimously a lower court's decision last week to rebuff the arguments made by Trump's legal team, led by the former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, that voting in Pennsylvania was marred by widespread voter fraud. Trump actually lost that state by 80,000 votes, by the way. And so the judge here, who was appointed by Donald Trump, his name is Stefanos Bibas, said this: free, fair elections are the lifeblood of our democracy. Charges of unfairness are serious, but calling an election unfair does not make it so. Changes require specific allegations and then proof. We have neither here. He also said voters, not lawyers, choose the president. Ballots, not briefs, decide elections. The campaign's claims have no merit. And again, just to reiterate, Bibas was appointed by Donald Trump, and the lower court's ruling referred to this specific complaint as Frankenstein's monster haphazardly stitched together. That's how much of a disaster the Trump campaign has been in making its case through the courts.
Everybody on that Third Circuit decision was a Republican appointed judge. 2 from George W. Bush, and the person who wrote the opinion was a Trump appointed judge, as Anna pointed out to you guys. And he was super harsh. He said, not only do you not have any evidence of voter fraud, you didn't even allege it. He did everything but call them schmucks. So, and it's true, Rudy Giuliani said this is not a voter fraud case. Then why did you bring it? And so they then went on to say, well, you should invalidate every vote in Pennsylvania anyway. In this the state court case, they wanted to invalidate only the Democratic counties. In the federal case, in the Third Circuit, they wanted to invalidate all the votes because they didn't like that in some of the blue counties, they followed the law and had them, one of the things that they alleged was had people who had made a mistake on their ballot in terms of how they postmarked it or whatever it is, not the content of the votes, right? were able to cure it. They could do the same exact thing in the Republican counties, and they did, but not at as much of a rate. So they're like, since the Republican counties were dumb, we should invalidate every vote in the state. The Trump appointed judge is like, that's not a thing. There is no remedy where you invalidate other people's valid legal votes because you weren't bright enough to fix your own errors, which you had all the right in the world to do is in a legal way before the vote came in. No. Everything is a no. You guys are dumb. Okay, if you read that whole thing, and I read so much of it in one of the earlier videos, he's practically yelling at them at the top of his lungs. You're an embarrassment. And by the way, in Georgia, we need a recount. There was a recount in Georgia. There was a hand recount. They recounted every vote by hand. Fraud. Yeah, dumps. And guys, I can't emphasize it enough. And one of the reasons I'm emphasizing it is because I'm tired of punching down to some of the folks who are just can't figure things out in this country. That they're not that bright, and I'm starting to feel bad about punching down, okay? But we've got to get rid of this guy, and he's trying in every way to do a political coup, and his zombies believe him 1,000,000%. So these zombies are all out there, and I feel like we progressives are the only ones fighting them. The Democrats are like sipping tea, they're leaning back, they're like, oh yeah, they're trying to appoint different electors. Hey, progressives, you go out there and fight them and see how it turns out, okay? The media who did a good job in the beginning, now they've kind of gone away from it. But he's still there, and he's still got 70 million people like zombies walking around going, nope, dumps. We know it, dumps.
They call them dumps, big, massive dumps.
That's what MAGA's reduced to. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.